Hello, and welcome to another British Cartographic Society Tea Time Talk. Today, we're going to be hearing about the mapping in Slovenia, and we're going to be hearing from Dr. Dusan Petrovic. So, without much further ado, I'll hand us over to Dusan so we can hear a bit more.
So, good evening to all of you. Nice to have so many of you together with us. So, as it was announced, today the theme I will present is about cartography in Slovenia. Christopher already said something to me, so I'm Dusan Petrovic, the assistant professor of cartography at the University of Ljubljana, Faculty of Civil and Geodetic Engineering, where I am in position of head of chair of cartography, photogrammetry, and remote sensing. Besides, I'm also active in international level, in International Cartographic Association, as a long-year representative of Slovenia, and now from the last year also as one of the vice presidents. Besides, I can say that I'm also a quite common map user, as enthusiastic orienteering runner, mountaineer, adventure racer, and also as a member of the map commission at International Orienteering Federation. So that's, I believe, more than enough for the introduction of myself. Now let's move to Slovenia. So I'm pretty sure that all of you, since you're the people dealing with the maps, with cartography, are aware. But for the ordinary people, sometimes it's a little bit messy because we have three entities quite close together with very common names. So for some people, it's sometimes a problem to distinguish between Slovenia, Slovakia, and Slavonia, but only the one is in the center of the Europe, of course, if you use the correct map projection and the contents of the map. Anyway, Slovenia, pretty small country, but very diverse, partially connected to the Alpine area, with near the Mediterranean coast and the Pannonian Plateau, the member of many associations and so on. But probably one thing which you are not aware is that Slovenia is the only country in the world having the name love within the name of the country. I don't know what it means. I don't believe that we live much happier and more loving with this. But apart of that, we are aware, for instance, that the shape of our country is not really like something connected to the heart, but it is connected. It's similar like a hand. So we are also sometimes called our country as a hand. And even in the very first, I would say, touristic web pages, we had quite a nice image of a hen dressed in the national costume. And here's another important animal connected with Slovenia. For those who've been already to Ljubljana, you're probably aware that the most important, let's say, animal of Ljubljana, the symbol of it is a dragon, which is also in the bridges and in the sign of the Ljubljana. But okay, now let's move to maps and to cartography. First time Slovenia as a territory can be recognized on the 5th map of the Ptolemy. But let's rather concentrate on the Slovenian cartographer, so the one who lived or worked in Slovenia. So now we need to move to the 16th century, where the Žiga Herberstein can be recognized as the oldest, let's say, the first known cartographer which originated from the territory of today's Slovenia, from Vipava. But as you might see, his main map, or the most known map which he created, is not presenting the area of Slovenia, but area of the Russia, Ukraine, Baltic states. So he served as a diplomat, and during his work, he also communicated a lot and traveled a lot. And obviously, he made this map of that area, which was even a part of the Ortelius World Atlas. The second one from nearly the same period was Pietro Copo. Pietro Copo, which we can, according to the name, recognize that he originated from the Italy, from the Venice, he was a Venetian, but he married the woman in territory from Slovenia coastline, and then the rest of his life he lived in the Isola, so the town in the Slovenian coastline. Nowadays, he created quite some interesting maps, like the one we see here, so the map of the world. Then, for instance, some other regional maps, and the most famous map of his work was the map of the Istria. So pretty precise, correct for that time, for the, of course, the technology and the data which was available at that time for him. Then let's move some 150 years later. Then here we have a very famous Slovenian, let's say, geographer. We call him polyhistor, Janez Vajkard Valvazor. His most recognized work is Glory of the Duchy of Carnolia, sorry, which was published in 1689 in Nuremberg. And part of this book was also the map of the Duchy of Carniola. So he traveled around the area. He noted different facts. He even collected a lot of materials. And within his book, this is a kind of the complete geographical, ethnological, even botanical description of the era. And these maps which he created was really full of the geographical facts, also some important facts which happen in the area, and also equipped, as you might see, with the images of castles, of some cities, and similar. So he was so famous that when Slovenia, after winning the independence, established his own money, he was portrayed on the money bill. But since he bankrupted at the end of his life, perhaps that was the reason why he was put on the banknote with a value approximately today less than 10 euro cents. Nevertheless, the successor, Johann Baptist Hohmann, he was basically the German, took his material from the Valvazor, and he regularly produced maps based on the Valvazor map. He quite well lived on that, so obviously the Valvazor was not clever enough, or perhaps it was also the problem of the years of the crisis. Anyway, another very important work of Janez Valvazor was his investigations or explaining of the phenomenon of intermittent lake of the Cerknica. So the Cerknica lake is one of the largest intermittent lake, and based on this map and also the phenomenon how this lake is operating in the karstic area, Valvazor was entered in the British Royal Academy. Here we have another one. So the Anton Steinberg also investigated about the Cerknica lake, and he even proposed and explained complete hydraulic system of the lake, how it works. Besides, he also painted quite interesting paint on oil, which represents the winter fishing in one of the winters, which was extremely dry, so domestic people could just collect the fish under the ice, because usually in the winter the lake is filled with water. Obviously, this winter the situation was different. And why I'm talking about him, of course, he has to be important also for cartography. He was a kind of the administrator of a road system of southern Carniola, and this is his map of the road system, how with existing and also with some planned roads on this part of the area of Carniola. The next interesting person was Ivan Dizmal Floriančič de Greenfield from end of the 17th and 18th century. He created, again, based on his own notice. So he also traveled around the entire country. He was a priest. He prepared the very detailed map at the scale nearly to 100,000 on 12 sheets. So really very detailed work, also graphically very well prepared. Here we can see this the main part and the, let's say, the logo of the map. And one important thing is that besides most of the names on his maps were German or Italian, depends on the area, here we can find the first expression of the Triglav, which is the Slovenian name for the Slovenian highest mountain. Now, the next one I would like to introduce was not a Slovenian, it was the French. So the Balthazar Ake, a French doctor who served as a doctor in the Idria, which was at that time very important town in Habsburg Empire, because this was the place of the mercury mine. But obviously the miners in this mine were quite healthy, and he's got a lot of time to do a lot of other things. So he explored about botanical, he explored quite some new species around the Idria, and also he created this very nice map with a really good three-dimensional effect of presenting relief. Another important French cartographer for Slovenian territory was Gaetan Palma, of course, his very known map of the Illyrian provinces. And the importance is because on the time of the Illyrian provinces, Ljubljana became an important city because it was the capital of the Illyrian provinces, and from very regional, town of regional importance at that time, really Ljubljana became an important and recognized city. So now we are already in the middle of the 19th century, when the Peter Kozler, another interesting Slovenian cartographer, created a map of the Slovenian land and provinces. So a bit larger area, together with Carnolia, also presents the Steiermark and the Carinthia and the Istria, even some part of the Italy. And on this map, Peter Kozler, with a thin line, presented the area which at that time was populated with the Slovenes, so with the Slovene nationality. But this was just in the middle of the 19th century, very politically, I would say, challenging area. And this map was prohibited for 5 years. Even after 5 years, it was allowed to use it. But even today, it's interesting to compare the area which was at that time populated with Slovenians with today borders. So we can easily see where the borders, national borders, are different, like the modern borders of the country. But that's not the end of the story of the Peter Kozler. This is probably the only map he made, at least which is known by him, because besides he was quite a, let's say, rich people at that time, and he was also the owner of the brewery. The Brewery Union, one of the even nowadays existing breweries. And just few years, perhaps last year, the new version of the can is equipped now with his name and description that he was the founder of this brewery, and he was also the cartographer. The next person, the next important, let's say, cartographic enthusiast in the area in Slovenia was Blaž Kocen. So he was a teacher, and obviously as a teacher, he recognized the lack of different cartographic material. So he created quite a lot of maps, of regional maps, and also he created a wall map, so the school wall map of Europe in different languages of Habsburg monarchy. So this his maps were used in many places in the school system of Austro-Hungarian monarchy. He also created or designed some atlases, and even now the modern atlas of one of the most important publishers in Austria still holds the name Codes and Atlas, which is named for this ancient Slovenian cartographer. And the last person, which I will mention, let's say the last enthusiast among them, was Ivan Celan. So he lived in the 20th century as an ordinary, let's say, person who lived in the farm. So he was ordinary farmer without any really specific education on geography or anything else, but he was very skilled drawer. So with a extremely good ability to graphically create something. And here you can see his map, which he created without really any cartographic or geographic pre-education. You might see down there when he was 16. So this map was made when he was 16. Of course, in next years, he was mostly involved in the work on the farm. So he even bought a new farm area and worked hard there. And he collected some money to repay all the loans. But then the world economic crisis came, and he lost mostly all his savings in the bank. So he was really upset what to do. And with his really great ability of drawing, he decided to redraw the banknotes in an amount which was lost in the bank crisis. So this money bills which he created was really from geographically nearly the same as the original one, except the watermark. Everything else looked completely the same. But unfortunately, he was not so successful with distributing. And when he tried to distribute it, they recognized him. But luckily, instead of sending him in jail, they sent him to kind of the forced work into Military Geographic Institute in Belgrade. So he had a chance there to learn how to really correctly produce maps. And after returning back to Slovenia, he really created some magnificent, some really extraordinary products. And even today, so many decades after his death, in most of the schools, in the school system in Slovenia, we're still using his wall maps. So this was the end of the enthusiasts. Now let's move to the pragmatics. Of course, the pragmatism in cartography is usually based on the official maps when somebody needs to prepare something based on the official survey and official mapping. So the first official survey in Slovenia was done by Austro-Hungarian authorities in the term of Emperor Joseph, and therefore we usually call it as a Josephine survey. It was followed by the next one a few decades later in the time of Emperor Francis, so called the Franciscan survey. Then in the period of the third survey, we got a problem because now the name of the emperor at that time was Franz Joseph, and it's a little bit problematic how to then call this as a Franz Josephine survey. Even worse is that the Franz Joseph ruled for nearly 60 years, and in his area there were even the fourth survey, and that's the reason why we are rather distinguish this called with the third and the fourth survey instead of really name it under the emperor. Of course, after that, after the First World War, all the rules which was done by the Military Institute of Monarchy was then just somehow postponed to the Military Geographic Institute of Kingdom Yugoslavia, the one which Ivan Celan had to work for it, which we mentioned earlier. And after the Second World War, the duty of the official survey of the country took over to the Military Geographic Institute, this time of the Yugoslav People's Army. And really, we have to say that within 60s, 70s, and 80s, they really created a very accurate and modern system of topographic maps at different scales, really, I would say, modern and very good system. And the last updates were somewhere from the 80s. course, even in Slovenia at that time, there were some cartographic activity, because these military maps were more or less not available for the ordinary people. It was only it could only be used for the military purposes. So for the normal maintaining and organizing the planning in the Slovenia decided to establish some parts of the system, even in the time of Yugoslavia. And mostly this was the only republic which really established part of this system. So the most important map was the basic topographic plan at the scales 1 to 500 and 1 to 10,000, where altogether nearly 2,500 sheets were created. So really the entire area was mapped, very detailed. Unfortunately, the updating of this map was not very strict and very regular, and we will see later on that after the independence it was not used anymore. The next important project, which started already during the time of Yugoslavia, was the cyclic area survey. Also next to the cyclic survey, which was done by military authority, so the civil Slovenian territory had its own survey. And then the system of general maps. And also Slovenia decided to create its own topographic map at the scale 1 to 50,000, but according to the restrictions of the army, the accuracy was limited, and also detainees, and it was more or less used as a kind of for a tourist map or similar. And finally, last and not least, we had a lucky, because the director of this military geographic institute, the most period after the Second World War, was Slovenian. And so Slovenian civil authorities somehow managed to negotiate with the military authorities that together with official military map 1 to 25,000, Military Geographic Institute also create a kind of the reduced version, but luckily not distort, like it was the case in many, let's say, other Eastern countries. So Slovenia was able to use 1 to 25,000, a bit reduced content. It was not completely open for the public, but for, let's say, administrative work, it was possible to use this map. And of course, there were some other maps also made by already at that time some cartographic institutions. The most, I would say, popular among them were road maps and the mountain maps. And then in 1991, when Slovenia proclaimed independence, we were faced with a situation where quite a lot of base material, especially all the base material of military maps, so the different scales of topographic maps, remained in Belgrade. It was not available for Slovenian authorities, not even then, even for the next decades. And therefore, somehow, partially, Slovenia had to re-establish the system of cartography, in partially even from the beginning, which really was interesting task of generation, which most of the European states started somewhere in the beginning of 19th century. So, and I really have to say that I'm lucky that I graduated in 1994. So my first job just was working with this establishing of the new system. What we did. So of course, there was also quite a lot of political forces to create own new Slovenian maps. The one was need for the maintaining of the area, for the planning, but also the another thing was a kind of the important political role to show that we have a system topographic maps. And since we had this economic edition of the old military map 1 to 25,000 already in Slovenia, besides the printed sheets, we also had copies of the films with the last revision only 5 years before gaining the independence. It was a political decision that we quickly have to somehow redesign this old Yugoslav map to new Slovenian map. And as a final result, we created the sheets cover all the area of Slovenia. It was altogether nearly 200 sheets. Of course, the same division like it used to be in the former military system, but of course we changed the outline design. We a little bit adapted the colors and the margin content. And besides the printed versions of each sheets, we also offered to the users the scans of the originals, and even part of the content was quite quickly also vectorized. But of course, once again, the main importance was to create a map which looks like a Slovenian. So nobody really took care how the contents is correct. So we were even instructed to reduce the costs to a maximum possible level, to minimum possible level, and to produce all the 200 sheets as soon as possible. So only restoration of contents was really only partial. The main roads, the borders, the names were corrected, while most of contents really based on the situation in the mid of the 80s. That's also the reason why after 20 years, in 2019, the National Mapping Authority decided to completely withdraw this map as an integral part of the system. And now this map is only a kind of the archive document. Parallelly, our military authorities updated this map because they need it for their use. This military version is not available. I would not say that it is restricted. It's not prohibited to use it, but you cannot get it because it's only used and made for the military purposes. But since at the moment they reached nearly 3/4 of all the sheets, they have planned to complete the whole territory until 2026, and there are some discussions already at that time when everything will be available and finished. This map would be accepted or somehow took over by the mapping authority and also available for the public. So now, during this period, we are really without the official map 1 to 25,000. But so this is the general map which shows which sheets are already created and which are not. Of course, technology is completely new. Also, the division on the sheets is completely different. So let's hope that we will get this map in 2 years. Another reason why Mapping Authority decided to somehow leave the 1 to 25,000 is the fact that in the beginning of the millennium, we started to produce our new map 1 to 50,000. It was the period where Slovenia wanted to join to NATO, and since 1 to 50,000 is official NATO map scale, the politicians thought that we need the map 1 to 50,000 if we want to be accepted to the NATO. And of course, it was nice possibility for us, for cartographers, having full political support to create really map 1 to 50,000 in accordance with the NATO standards, with a good quality, with complete and correct contents and everything else. So in 5 years, we created or produced altogether 58 sheets. And we even created 2 versions. One version for the civil purpose, one version bilingual for military purpose, completely aligned with NATO standards. And so here you can see on the one side the design of the civil version, on the right-hand side is design of the military version. And even we somehow introduced a kind of the innovative method for printing and for creating the sheets. Since we had quite different marginal contents for the Slovenian and for the civil and for the military version, we decided to move in one case on the one side, as you might see here on the left-hand side, the civil margin and military margin in 2 languages in the bottom and on the right-hand side. So everything, since the most of the inner contents was the same, only with some differences. We printed the entire sheets together, and only after the printing, we cut the sheets differently. Here you can see one rectangle in the black and one rectangle in the purple. So I would say, with some low cost printing, or printing one-time printing, we can get immediately two different versions of the map. And after the first issue, so after the 2005, only the military version is printed. So now it's no problem anymore, because the civil version is only available in a digital form. And regular updating is not really regular. It took 10 years to make the first reambulation, and then the second one just finished. So sometimes in the 10 years, we are updating this map. The next category, I would say, or the next group of the maps are general maps. Due to size of the Slovenia, which is rather small, when we are coming to the level of the general maps, we have maps on the one sheet only. So we are regularly producing 4 or now even 5 scales, the general maps, from the 1 to 250, which is the largest one, to 1 to 1 million. But be aware that 1 to 1 million for the size of Slovenia means A4 format. So that's why I'm saying mostly 4, not 5, because the smallest one, the scale 1 to 2,500,000 scale, really exists with it's only used for some digital versions, because the size itself is really small. But besides the topographical and general maps, we are also producing our nautical charts. Slovenia is a country with a sea. We don't have a lot of coast, only somewhere about 30 to 40 kilometers, depends how you are measuring. But we have a system of the nautical charts, different scales, of course, completely according to the standards. We know that nautical charts are one of the 2 most standardized maps in the world. And here is also the example of the air map, air navigation map for visual flying. So let's see how it is with the most detailed topographic data. As mentioned, already in the 60s, we produced, or let's say the Slovenian geodesy and cartography produced the basic topographic map at the scale 1 to 5 and 1 to 10,000. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, these sheets were not regularly renewed, and they were even printed at the beginning, but since they were not regularly renewed, and also they were created still on the foils with all old technology, also the administration decided after the 1996 that they will not renew them at all. And in 2019, these sheets were officially removed from the system. They are now only exist as the archive material, while the substitution for these basic topographic plans, of course, is a national topographic map, the vector map, national topographic database, the vector database, which at the beginning started to be produced on the sheets, so which just replaced the old basic topographic plan, but later now it is merged and combined into the common base. The issue and the problem of this national topographic database is that it took 20 years altogether to cover the entire Slovenia. And of course, now for quite some areas, we had a status already 20 years old, which is not really very useful for the most of the users, unfortunately. So the object groups and the contents is nearly like it is in all the modern topographic databases. So this is nothing really special. And also, since all the data is in vector form, we can create different visualizations from it. The main sources which we are using for maintaining and for establishing this national database are stereo pairs of cyclic area survey, supplemented with the laser scanning. Attributes are collected with different sources, even from old maps sometimes, but of course mostly from databases from some other authorities. And as a beginning, of course, like in many other countries, the basic idea is that to have this national topographic database as a really location basis for all other spatial data. Unfortunately, due to this out-of-dateness, it is not really the case in Slovenia, and the users sometimes uses many other available source data instead of official map data of a national topographic database. Sometimes they are just using the original material and they created their own databases. So we still regularly runs cyclic aerial survey. We are regularly producing orthophoto images from it. At the beginning, these orthophoto images, which we regularly started in 2001, was in a black and white form. Later, they were replaced by the color ones and also the infrared versions. And the regular cycle of updating orthophoto is 3 years. So each year, 1/3 of territory of Slovenia is covered. The next basic data, which is also very useful now for Slovenia, is LiDAR data. The first LiDAR survey of entire area of Slovenia was done in 2015, started in 2011. And it's important that immediately after we started with this survey, everything was publicly available, freely available. And I remember at that time that also some my colleagues from many other countries which haven't had access to the freely data at that time use Slovenian data for, let's say, different analysis, how to use the LiDAR data and how and what to prepare with them and what results and products can be done with them. So just last year, the second cycle of the regular survey started. So from now, it is also planned that we will have the regular 3-year cycle of the LiDAR survey together next to the cyclic survey, to the aerial survey, which will still remain as it is. And for the user, generally, I think it's similar like in other countries as well. Users can get 4 different types of the LiDAR data. First, georeference classified point cloud, only relief point clouds, then digital elevation model, and also the image of the hill shading for those who are not really able to or scared to use other sort of data. So if we now at the end see where and what we can offer to our users, it doesn't really look very perfect. We have national topographic database, but some areas are really updated even 20 years. And it would take quite some time when we will get a regular updating, which could be at least, let's say, 4 or 5 years, something like this. Okay, we have regular state orthophoto and LiDAR data available. We only have as the largest scale at the moment, national and military topographic map at the scale 1 to 50,000. 1 to 25,000, as I mentioned, might be perhaps available in 2 or 3 years when the military version will be completed. Then we have a national general maps, nautical charts, navigation map, but these are only few items. Of course, besides the maps, user can use a lot of other topographic data. So especially on the level of the relief with the LiDAR survey, we can offer the 0.5 meter digital elevation model for entire area. We have on the 4 levels, the 4 different levels register of geographical names. Then we have a very detailed database of water network. On this water network, you can clearly see, it's very nice to see which areas are karstic in Slovenia. So the area where the basis is the limestone and where there is almost no water on the surface, because all the water really penetrates through the limestone. Then, of course, some other registers, record of the land cover, cadastre of public economical infrastructure, real estate cadastre, in two versions, in two types of land parcels, buildings, register of spatial units, state borders, and so on. Of course, according to the principles of Inspire, everything is freely available, mostly through the web pages of the Surveying and Mapping Authority, also some data through some other providers with some, let's say, web way, or you can with VMS, or you can download data. So different types of data is available according to the user needs, of course. We also exchange our data with European associations, for instance, Eurogeographics and similar. Besides the official ones, we also have the other maps. But now, sometimes we are, let's say, joking a little bit that users in Slovenia can be a little bit confused. Namely, the map is translated in Slovenia as carte. So carte means maps in Slovenia, but the word carte in Slovenia also means the tickets or the play cards. So we have the same word for everything. And there is sometimes some really funny mess between the use of the same term for all these three. But in generally, I can say that the maps are popular in Slovenia, especially some types of the maps. For instance, mountain maps are probably the most, let's say, popular maps, not only among the Slovenians, also about the many foreigner tourists who are coming to Slovenia. And we are therefore very proud that one of the Slovenian mountain maps was awarded at the International Cartographic Association in Paris 2011. And this was not the only awardee. Also some other Slovenian maps were awarded, for instance, city plan of Maribor or the tactile map. So we have quite a lot of tactile maps as well, and also the nautical charts. And finally, also the orienteering maps represents quite important cartographic, I would say, reality in Slovenia. We have more than 300 different, or now even 400 different orienteering maps. Well, this is more than the registered orienteering runners in Slovenia. And also we are organizing quite a lot of challenging competitions. We have interesting terrains and a lot of participants and competitors from Europe and also from other continents are coming to our races. And by the way, when I mentioned the nautical charts before, next to them, orienteering maps are even more standardized maps in the world. Let me show you even few specific examples. This is the example of a lenticular map of the Julian Alps, made by one of my students in combination with the Professor Manfred Buchholtner. And one also funny thing, the globe of Slovenia, showing Slovenia as an island or as a continent entirely in the seaside. And finally, my favorite map, it was one gift which I get from my students. It was the best map I ever got, the map on the chocolate, and it was very tasty. So thank you very much. With this, I'm concluding my presentation. I hope that you enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. That was a very comprehensive run through of the mapping of Slovenia from the earliest to today. Yes, it's quite interesting. It's good that you're actually involved in, well, you've been involved in mapping almost from the beginning of the modern era of.
Okay, not really from the modern era, because modern era somehow started after the Second World War, but from this digital era.
Recent era.
Yeah, recent digital, definitely. Yeah.
Yes,
I was one of the ones who really somehow started with the digital procedures. Yeah.
So I have to say it's very interesting how you've been involved in that the more open time of mapping in the
in some way, definitely. Yeah.
So I have to. So I can already see that. Look at the questions that we've already. Well, look at the comments. We've already had one comment which is pointing us towards a Slovenian documentary on one of your cartographers. So that's a if anyone can speak Slovenian, it would probably sounds like it'll be an interesting documentary. Hopefully you can get hopefully you can set a transcription for that.
Yeah.
But yes, so I can yes, overall I have to say it's been very interesting seeing the general breadth of mapping. So it's been always it's very interesting to see that the depth of what's available.
Yeah.
So we just scanning down. So we've got yes, I can see generally people happy with the detailed overview that you provided. And the first question we have is do you have a view on the idea of a standardized topographic map series for Europe?
I know that some years ago, when Alex Kent really did some, I would say, surveying what are the different maps, topographic maps in different countries, he worked something and he then did some analysis. What are the differences? So I think to unify topographic maps around Europe is problematic because of diversity of the landscape. And every country, I would say, let's say, the most of the contents could be standardized, but then we have to leave some freedom for, I would say, adaptation really to specific areas and to specific cases. So I would say that complete standardization would be problematic, and also the topographic maps mostly are used, at least in the former times, were used for local purposes. So it's not really necessary that you have really a general standard which will work for all the countries.
Okay, good question, good answer. Okay, next question we've got. Against the background of the consistently contested territorial affiliation of the territory of Slovenia, how are the topograms with different historical backgrounds treated in the current official printed maps?
Fortunately, I can't see this
The chat.
on the chat. Yeah. The problem is that my chat is covered with. Okay. Here, let me see. Okay, now I can see it. Yeah. So this was the question. Okay, yeah. Yeah, the toponyms with different historical backgrounds. So basically, it's quite complicated about the toponyms in Slovenia, also because we have official minorities. So in two areas, basically for these areas where we have a minority, it's officially bilingual. Even in one part, we have a fourth different languages. It is the area close to the Austria and Italy. Peter Jordan worked a lot about this, and it's funny discussing with him because he's always showing this as an example. And but I would say that at the moment we don't really have a problems with that. Also because we really carefully established with our register of topographic names. So with this register, we strictly defined also the origins for the names, and we also have this let's say historical background connected with modern and nowadays maps, nowadays names.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Okay, another question. It's
I can see it. Yeah.
So how popular is OpenStreetMap in Slovenia?
It is very popular. Also, the most part of Slovenia is very well covered, especially, of course, the areas close to the cities, and especially since even I said that I'm quite regularly using maps for my outdoor activities, and due to lack of the 1 to 25,000 scale, we quite often use OpenStreetMap and even OpenTopoMap. I would say the OpenTopo as a visualization, most cartographical visualization of OpenStreetMap is quite commonly used.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, another question. Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting. I think I've seen a different version of the Aqua map attributed to someone else. Could that be right?
Sure. Yeah, sure. I only showed the one example. So there was more examples of his maps. As I mentioned, obviously the miners were really very healthy in this mine. So it was not only one map he created. There was a few versions and also a few different maps with different contents even.
Very interesting, that one there. Next one is an interesting chapter of national cartographic production is a national atlas. How about a further development of the 2005 project?
Yeah, sorry, Eric, because I missed this a little bit. So yeah, that's another topic. I'm not really concentrated on the atlases because the atlases are mostly created by geographical institute in Slovenia. So they are the ones who are mostly take care about the atlases. And yeah, it's the fact that in 2001 and 2005 was the last issue of the national atlas. And as soon as I know, there was no, let's say, additional versions of it, at least the newest version of it. But I need to discuss to them to see how it is. So definitely you can get the answer.
Okay. Another question is how much cooperation is there with your neighbor Croatia? You both shared the TK military series.
Yeah, that's true. So first of all, already at the beginning, the situation was a little different. We had these basic topographic plans, and especially we were lucky because we had this civil version of 1 to 25,000. This was not the case in Croatia. And also the situation already at the beginning was quite different. We had this short few days strike with Yugoslav army in Croatia. They had a war, and they really needed the maps. So at that time, also the Americans and the others helped him to create the maps with the material which was not available today to them and also to us. And after that, they really started to create the system of their map 1 to 10 and then 1 to 25,000 from the national topographic database. So they had to start with the original data, and from this one, then they created the map system, which I must say at the moment is better than ours. So in one part, it would be better that we would not have this material from the military available in Slovenia. So we had to also to do this way. But then, as I mentioned, we were pragmatics.
Interesting there. Next question. Do you in academia engage with government with regard to mapping and geospatial data?
Not really, but at the beginning of my career, first, let's say 7 years, I worked at the Geographical Institute, Geodetic Institute. So at that time, I was deeply involved in all this project of the National Mapping Authority. So now I'm mostly just following the situation, still taking care of what's going on then, and of course, explaining this to my students. And from time to time, I'm involved in some of the projects, but this is not really a permanent connection anymore, like it used to be.
Okay. Another bit in the chat here, which I found amusing myself. It's the again, thank you for the interesting presentation. And in particular, I thought the single printing of the dual military civilian maps was a brilliant solution for producing 2 paper maps, which I found myself a very amazing idea.
Yeah, we were searching for let's say economical solution, and we found this innovative idea how we can really produce both maps together.
Very interesting. It was an ingenious idea.
But besides that, I can also say that nearly all the maps which were printed in the printing device, of course, we were there and we checked the printings as well. And I can say that most of the printings were done during the night. Also because of allowing the atmosphere, the correct temperature to avoid so the differences with the paper, so distortions of the paper. And I remember at that time I really spent quite a lot of nights within this printing device and checking these maps, how they came from the printing machine. It was interesting as well.
Interesting insight into the process of making them, into this process of producing the maps there. That's
yep.
It's been very, very interesting, the whole talk. I have to say it's been very interesting that the not just the historical aspect that you covered, but that again, as I said, the whole breadth of all the mapping that's being produced. It's I'm going to be honest, it's one of the most comprehensive talks we've had. So it's very, very, very interesting, and I'm sure that a lot of I'm sure the audience have agreed with me, and it's just from the comments of that we've seen, it's been a real pleasure hearing from you, and the detail that you it's just the amount of detail you've given has been very interesting.
I'm happy to hear that, and I really hope that you really enjoyed. Yeah, it was nice.
No,
sharing my experience and everything with you. Yeah,
I know. So yes, there's an extensive introduction into the history of Slovenian cartography, and and I think another one on that absolutely knowing nothing about mapping in Slovenia, and so a really interesting and comprehensive overview. So I have to say thank you very much, and I have to say it's been a pleasure. So
once again, thank you for inviting me, and yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I think we'll wind this up now. So I have to say thank you very much for the talk. It's again can't say again how many times it's been a pleasure and very interesting. I want to say thank you for the audience for joining and for staying to the end. I want to say that this will be our last talk and for 2 months while we take a break for the summer and for the annual conference. So as a final plug for any, I'll just say that we have the annual conference taking place in September. It's available for booking now. So if you wish to hear more from us in between the talks, we've got the physical event taking place in London in September. So anyway, for now, I want to say thank you and goodbye.